Hi, everyone. We are just admitting some people from the waiting room. We have a great panel today. So we are recording this session, and this recording will be uploaded to our section website either later tonight or by tomorrow morning. So we will kick off in just a minute as everyone is still joining. So I'm going to give it just another minute. Okay, so everyone, thank you for joining our CLE panel today. It's called Breaking into the Privacy World. We have a wonderful panel full of various types of experience as to how people have entered privacy, advice and tips that our panelists have on how to get started, how to assess opportunities for breaking into privacy, and then setting yourself up for success and distinguishing yourself. So I'd like to start and ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Michelle, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Michelle Ramsden. I'm an attorney advisor at the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Privacy and Civil Liberties. I entered privacy in my second year out of law school as a presidential management fellow with the Department of Homeland Security and managed privacy operations for ICE Homeland Security investigations. Now at Department of Justice, I manage 17 department components and work on the intersection of privacy and data governance, domestic and international policy and legislative matters, advise Privacy Act litigation, and manage privacy training for the department. I think the thing I most enjoy about privacy, and specifically in my role, is the evolving nature of the work. You never know what new technologies might spark a privacy debate or what policy efforts might land on my desk.
That's great. Rachel, can you please come off mute and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Rachel Drucker. I am the Data Privacy Officer at Interns, which is a small, medium startup in Virginia. I have been doing privacy for about 15 years. I started in the federal government and then went over to Coca-Cola and Turner, which turned into Warner Media. And I would like to note for the group that I do have a master's in cybersecurity, but I do not have a law degree. And I think my favorite thing, is how privacy is always changing. So it always gives me a new opportunity to learn something new.
Thank you. James, can I ask you to come off mute and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is James Boxton. I graduated from Georgia State University College of Law in 2020 and began practicing in privacy in 2021. I currently am staff counsel on the McKesson Data Privacy and Cybersecurity team, where I deal with a majority of the necessary reporting, breach notification, and breach monitoring. My favorite thing about privacy is just how integral it is to all of our lives and how much information it encompasses.
Thank you. Megan, can I please ask you to come off mute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Megan. I have been a privacy practitioner for about 13 years now. I am currently leading the privacy team for an all-in-one marketing platform based in Atlanta called MailChimp. What I love about privacy is two things, really. First, the sense of community. I think privacy practitioners tend to be a collaborative group of folks, and that's really awesome. And then second, I really enjoy working with business and technical teams to help them achieve their goals in a way that is considerate of privacy requirements.
Thanks, Megan. Last but not least, Jason, our section chair. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name is Jason Bernstein. I'm actually vice chair until this summer of the privacy and technology section. So welcome everybody on behalf of the section. I am a co-chair of the privacy and technology group, privacy and security group for Barnes and Thornburg, a national law firm in the Atlanta office, where I work on pretty much all aspects of privacy and security, from left of breach, during breach, right of breach, with all sorts of different clients, from small startups to the large AmLaw 100 or Fortune 100 companies. Um, I've been doing this for about 10 years. I'm traditionally an intellectual property attorney, but while IP law is one of the faster growing areas and faster changing areas, privacy and security makes IP looks like it's molasses compared to all the things that have changed. And more importantly is that far more people around the world are more aware of privacy issues than probably almost any area of law that's reached the consumer level. So that's kind of exciting. So I look forward to being able to talk to people today about how you can break into this world, slide into this world, transition into this world, or just sort of travel into it.
Thank you, everyone, for that introduction. I do want to ask those of you who are joining as guests, please drop your questions in the chat. I'll moderate the questions and try to weave them into our panel discussion. Jason, did you also want to announce an upcoming event for the section as well to this group?
I would. The 36th Annual Privacy and Technology Law Forum is going to be held March 29th and March 30th, both days from 9 until 1:30. It is unfortunately going to be all virtual this year. I'm chairing the event, and much as though I wanted to have it at least hybrid, I just don't see it happening that easily this year to make an in-person event really attended. So it's going to be all virtual. Say the date is coming out soon. The panel or the speakers will be coming up announced soon. However, it can make it. Last year we had over 300 people attend. We're going to have speakers not just locally, but from around the country, around the world. I'm hoping to have more breakouts this year so that we have people that are we're talking about entry level or 100 level topics, and those that are talking about more advanced level topics. So I look forward to having you join us March 29th and March 30th. Back to you, Anna.
Yep. And hopefully everyone is able to join. It is a wonderful, that's also a wonderful half day, 2 half days of just being able to learn even more on the privacy and security side. So let's talk about breaking into privacy and how to start. Part of our panel, we're going to go through different experiences as there's a law student, a young professional, when you veer outside the traditional path that you set out in law school, and then also as a practicing attorney, how you might break in. So I'd like to start with James as a law student, and Michelle, I'll turn it over to you as well. As a law student, what's the best way to start thinking about breaking into privacy law? How can you start preparing yourself?
Well, as a law student, I think it is best that if you have the opportunity, definitely take a privacy law class if it is offered at your school. That was the situation for me while at Georgia State. The first opportunity I got, I saw there was a privacy law class offered by Will Bracker. I don't know if he is still teaching it at Georgia State. And from there, just connecting with him and learning the subject matter, I think really just helps you to determine if that's the area you'd like to go into. And then connecting with the professor and networking, of course. In addition to that, after taking the class, I decided, okay, I'd like to work in privacy for the summer. And so that was the my 2L year taking the class, and then going into 3L summer, seeking a privacy position. I just continue to literally randomly Google search privacy law internships, privacy law positions on LinkedIn and other places on the internet. And eventually I found the opportunity with a company called OneTrust, which is actually also based out of Atlanta. And from my OneTrust experience, I then navigated, okay, this is, the software that privacy uses or will be using. And from there, I continued to stay in contact with my people at OneTrust and just continue to pursue privacy experience, whether at internships in-house or with the government, and just seeking to get as much exposure as possible. Also volunteer opportunities, just like we mentioned the Privacy and Technology Legal Forum coming up. I volunteered at multiple privacy forums during law school, including this one hosted by our section. I believe that allowed me to tap into a network of privacy professionals and continue to learn the space and determine what type of opportunities are available. From there, I just continue to seek out privacy in every opportunity. I interned with the Federal Trade Commission and Cox Automotive. and ultimately was able to secure a position as a privacy analyst with McKesson. And then upon passing the bar, I was made staff counsel on the privacy and cybersecurity team. So I would encourage you to take the class, network, volunteer, definitely volunteer with our section and stay up to date with our events and opportunities. There's other outlets such as the IAPP, International Association of Privacy Professionals, that also has a lot of job postings and just allows you to stay up to date with the practice area.
Great, thanks,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Oh, yeah, I can add to it. So I didn't focus on privacy as a student, but I work pretty often with interns here at DOJ. I can give you kind of our read on what we look for students, for interns or entry-level professionals. So we generally look for people that have a demonstrated interest in privacy. It's a technical, constantly evolving field, which is good, but you have to be excited about the topic area to keep up with the pace of work. So we try to look for people that have at least done some sort of research into privacy, maybe have been an assistant to one of their professors in law school, or have taken an internship in privacy. At least recommend maintaining an awareness of and researching evolving privacy law so that you can speak intelligently to current events in the field. For us, often people will come to DOJ with an awareness of the sort of encryption debate that came out of the San Bernardino shooting and the debate between DOJ and Apple. Or Clearview AI and the concerns about US government use of that kind of technology. So it's good to have sort of considered those topics and have formed opinions on them so that you can speak to them when asked about it. And again, recommend, as James said, internships in privacy. There are some in government. There are also, there's an opportunity through IAPP, as he mentioned, to reach out to businesses or professionals that work in areas you're interested in and try to get that networking process started there. So, I think that's really the best thing you can do is just continue looking for opportunities of any type to sort of build your resume out.
Yeah, and Michelle, as a young professional, what sort of guidance do you have for someone who's graduated law school, has started their first job, or maybe just graduated even from their professional curriculum and that wants to break into privacy?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually the time in which I broke into privacy. And I will say it's difficult to get up to speed. So I, again, would recommend taking like as many trainings as you possibly can, attending panels like this, but also panels discussing the intricacies of advancements in technology or privacy laws. Get yourself sort of familiarized with the terminology. So that you understand, what the field is that you're entering and the current status of it. Also attend social events and conferences. I know everybody hates hearing about networking. As an introvert, so did I, but it's how I've gotten every job I've ever had. So, a familiar name or recommendation from a familiar face can go a long way. And then don't be shy about jumping into new and complex issues. Just be ready to ask smart questions. So one advantage of learning privacy is that, everyone is kind of learning as they're going, no matter what stage of their career they're in, because technology advances so quickly and the issues advance along with it. So we're all learning a lot of the issues together. So you don't have to know all of the answers or pretend like you do to jump into privacy. You just have to have smart questions ready and be willing to learn as you go.
It's a great point, Michelle. We are going to talk about different parts of privacy law, but definitely that is something that I've found is talking to other privacy professionals to understand blind spots is really helpful. And as Megan said, it's a really collaborative community. I want to turn first to Megan and Rachel. Both of you have been in privacy the longest out of this group, and probably before privacy was such a big trending topic. So, in terms of going, and obviously that meant starting outside a traditional path of either going from firm or in-house, but starting when it wasn't relatively known. What are some ways that someone can go outside, can practice and think about jump into privacy based on both your experience? Let's start with Megan and then we'll move to Rachel.
Sure. So I did take a somewhat non-conventional path in my career as a privacy attorney. I initially joined a consulting firm right after law school. And then I worked for several consulting firms for a few years after that before I took my career in a different direction. And I think consulting was really valuable because I was able to work on site with client teams across a number of sectors to solve sort of complicated problems that were facing their organizations. And even in my earliest years as a professional, I was working on things like building and scaling privacy programs, large scale data projects, or risk mitigation projects. And I think that my time as a consultant really helped me to remember to always think about how my advice could be implemented by the organization that I'm supporting, and to make sure that I was really giving actionable guidance to my clients. And that's helpful whether you're in-house or at a law firm.
Megan, let me also ask a question. Someone messaged me. One of our audience members is looking to make the jump from data privacy consulting into privacy law. So I assume that they are an admitted attorney. How can they do this when many privacy law jobs require 2 years of actual experience?
Yeah, I think that we'll probably talk a little bit later in this panel about distinguishing yourself as a professional, but I would say look for opportunities that line up with your skill set. And one thing that's great about consulting is I think you become comfortable with these sort of reach opportunities. So, be able to talk about how you can build on the skills that you have already to advance your practice as an attorney. And then also look for firms or in-house jobs that value that kind of practical guidance for clients.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, would love to hear your view as well on breaking into privacy.
So I was doing cybersecurity, and I somehow transitioned one day into privacy, and I was working in the government, and I started at the bottom as an analyst, and I just basically did everything anyone asked. And I think my favorite thing I learned was to ask why. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And I think that was the most beneficial thing I learned for privacy, because it helps you get a better background for what people actually need. Because I found that people will come to you with a request to do something, but what they really want is something else. They just don't know how to request it. So starting as an analyst and asking why was how I got into it. And then I just started to watch how privacy was being built out in the government. And then I worked and made some mistakes and figured out how to run my own program and worked with great people. And we all learned a lot. And then turning around and trying to transition that into corporate America was an interesting experience. You're using the same words, but they have different meanings, and trying to translate what you're doing in the government to what they need on those job applications and requirements outside of the government was a little bit of a challenge. But I have found that it's the same responsibilities. It's just a different set of laws, and just you have to read all the laws that are going to be applicable and just keep on learning and keep on trying to adapt them.
That's great. Jason, you came into privacy already as a practicing attorney and someone who added privacy as one of his practice areas. Can you talk a bit about that and your jump into privacy and advice you have for those in a similar position to you?
Well, I don't advise anybody to do it the way I do it, because pretty much all of my 37-year career has been sort of Forrest Gump serendipity. Sometimes good stuff happens, sometimes not so good. Not often was it intentional, and I did not intentionally get into privacy. It was totally by accident. But let me spend a few minutes here talking about how you can intentionally do something and do it better. The most important thing you need to do, if you're a practicing attorney, whether you're in-house corporate or in government or a law firm, right, and you want to either get more into privacy or migrate into the privacy department, So the overview is, number one, invest, right? The second thing is, what questions, right? The third thing is pro bono work. And the fourth thing is find a mentor. And so you take each one of these. Invest. No one's going to pay you for your time to learn how to learn privacy when it's not on your plate. So if you're in a law firm and there's no projects available for you, there's not a lot of billable hours, you got to learn on yourself. So I would start reading up on privacy in your existing area of law. So if you're in healthcare, look about privacy in healthcare. If you're in labor and employment, learn how privacy affects employment. Almost any area of law has got privacy aspects. So there's a million articles on the web, whether it's through IAPP or anywhere, to start reading about privacy and blank. So you can start spotting the issues. And when the issues might come up with your team, and if you're a young attorney, you start being able to provide value to your supervising partner and your team by at least having some knowledge, right? Because if you have some knowledge and nobody else on your team has any knowledge, guess what? You're the expert. Second, learn what questions to ask so you show that you know about the area. So by doing the investment, learning about some of the issues, you start asking questions, and occasionally someone might say, hadn't thought about that. What's your thought, Bernstein? Right? In which case you might now go find your mentor to say, hey, what should I think about this issue? If you're in, for example, in corporate and you're on a due diligence project, start learning about due diligence questions in privacy and IT, which permit almost any deal these days. And start making sure that those kind of questions are included. Right? Again, sometimes they will be, sometimes they may not be, or they might be very light. Start asking questions. Okay? Pro bono, this is a great way to start getting your toes wet. Pro bono partnership with Atlanta is a great source for this. And we need volunteers at Pro bono partnership. PBPA has got hundreds of nonprofit clients. So these are not individuals, they're nonprofits. And they have all sorts of legal issues, some of which involve privacy. And you can always get paired up with a different attorney, whether they're in-house or outside, to work on the project. So, or internally, if you're in a law firm, take on a pro bono project in privacy and ask someone in the existing privacy department to supervise you. Right? Just get you a little bit of knowledge. And lots of law firms have got billable credit given for pro bono work, or they've got a requirement. You get to learn on the job, and now you're starting to get exposure to the area and exposure to other attorneys in your firm to show that you're interested. And of course, you're doing good for the community. The last thing is find a mentor, whether they're inside your firm or outside your firm. I see there's at least a couple of my mentees, officially or unofficially, that are on this webinar, which is great to see. I can't say that I've done it the right way or the best way, but I've seen a different part of the chessboard than Rachel's seen, or Michelle's seen, or James has seen. We all see different parts of the chessboard of this whole program. So finding a mentor that can help give you a sounding board. I wish I had when I was growing up. So to me, it's an important part of what I think every lawyer should be doing, is helping raise the next crop.
Someone asked a good question. How do you find a mentor?
You find a mentor by you get involved with the section, right? Which obviously we've got a whole bunch of privacy attorneys in our section, right? Or in your firm, and say, hey, can we have coffee sometime, virtual or otherwise? And say, look, I'm looking to get into the privacy area. Would really appreciate getting your insights and perspective on it. And if the conversation goes well, and if the person you're talking with says, hey, got any further questions, feel free to give me a call. Okay. That doesn't establish a mentoring relationship, but if you follow up the call, the next time say, hey, got a few more questions. Can we talk for a little bit? If the person's shows some interest, you can ask, will you be my mentor on this? Some people might think like, whoa, that's a big commitment. Just ask them, hey, would you mind if I be able to ping you with questions once in a while? Ask if they're a mentor to anybody else at this point. That way you'll know whether they like playing with this role. And that doesn't, and a lot of times it doesn't have to be within your organization. Sometimes it shouldn't be within your organization, so that you can get a more objective outside look into different problems.
Anyone else want to add to that on finding a mentor?
Right. So I'm definitely familiar with the mentor search struggle. I was fortunate to have met Jason and Will and Ami and been able to connect with them. But just want to encourage the law students out there and anyone else looking for a mentor or someone else to give advice on entering the space. I encourage you to be persistent and to just continue to send those follow-up emails when you've met someone in the practice area that you're interested in. Just continue to facilitate that relationship, because they might not see the email on the first send, but you follow up a couple weeks, couple months later, just to say, hey, I'm still interested in privacy, and I saw that you were active, in this position, and just wanted to touch base with you. I can't stress that enough, that I've been fortunate to have met with so many different privacy attorneys at different firms and different in-house positions that have helped guide me along the road. So definitely be diligent on your mentor search, or just in general when looking for a position in privacy.
Yeah, and James, thanks for, I'm not sure why we're not able to spotlight on your video, or if it's just my view. But, I also want to emphasize, even when you don't have to be fresh out of law school to need a mentor. I've been practicing law for over 10 years. I'm in my 11th year now, and even I feel I need mentors. There's always something to learn, and the field is always changing.
And there's also different perspectives as your career evolves, where having someone on the outside can give you some practical advice as to whether you've stalled and where you're at, or just to give you a different perspective. Again, a mentor doesn't have to be with a capital M. I've had sort of an advisory board since I started my own practice back around '91, and I'd already been out of law school for 8 years. Nobody knew that they were on my advisory board, but we didn't have group meetings. But these are people from everyone to just research and finance and marketing and law, just friends who I could say, you got a few minutes. I'm sort of figuring out how to navigate this political issue inside my firm.
Yeah, so let's move into where are the opportunities? And Michelle, Megan, I'll start with Michelle, and then Megan and Jason, if you both can also jump in. How should someone assess various opportunities to jump into privacy, and where are the opportunities?
Sure. So I can speak about the opportunities that we have here in the U.S. government. So I am an attorney, but frankly, most privacy professionals in the government are not. Mostly they're analysts. There are not many attorney jobs in privacy in the federal government. DOJ is an exception, given that it's made up primarily of attorneys, and the office is situated within agency leadership. So it's structured very specifically to provide legal advice. But there are privacy attorney roles elsewhere, such as in the intelligence community. I know there's some at the Postal Service. And within the Office of General Counsel, a lot of different agencies, there are privacy sections or teams that work at least tangentially to privacy to sort of get your foot in the door. Most agencies here have non-legal privacy teams that sort of liaise with those general counsel attorneys on privacy issues. In those cases, the non-legal privacy teams will get the most on-the-ground experience, and the attorneys will work more on translating that into policy or into cases. But the analyst might be focused on government information as well as privacy, or FOIA as well as privacy, sort of often situated tangential to other things. So if you're looking for something in the federal government, sort of look into those keywords. Personally, I did make the leap into government in a non-legal role, but I knew that doing so, I would have to focus on trying to get detail assignments to other legal offices and network more to ensure that when legal roles opened up, I was there and that people had heard of me. If you're looking to find roles in the federal government, There's a USA Jobs is the general federal hiring website, but also the Department of Justice has our own hiring website on justice.gov. So keep an eye out for things there. But if you're interested in working in the federal government, if you're able to contact me or someone else that that works here in privacy, we can get you on some listservs so that you're aware of opportunities when they do arise.
Megan, what would you like to add to that?
Sure. So when I started out in consulting, a number of my clients were actually federal government agencies. So I worked for DoD, State Department, Postal Service, Veterans Affairs. And one thing I would say about sort of evaluating new opportunities is thinking about whether the opportunity is going to add a new skill set or experience to your resume that's going to move your career kind of in the direction that you want to go. So for me personally, I was working at consulting firms that had large government practices for a while, and I decided that I wanted to maybe move into the private sector and work in technology. So I switched to a firm that had more commercial clients and did that for a while. And one piece of advice, or something that served me well as a consultant specifically, was when I was interviewing with hiring managers, I would always make sure to ask if they were hiring for a sold and funded position or a role on a client site, or if they were hiring to the bench because they expected that their practice was going to grow. Because for me, that was sort of the difference between being able to hit the ground running on a client project or being in a position where you would have to kind of try to establish yourself at a firm without a client relationship that you were kind of walking into. I found that the former was a little bit more easy to navigate at some of these large consulting firms, but something to think about definitely if you're considering a career in consulting or moving from one firm to another.
Jason, any thoughts to add?
Look at the process as a path with different forks, and different ways to go about it. You find a way to get in, and then you use that to leverage or to find the next position where you want to get to where you really want to get. One of my mentees has been working part-time for a California technology company doing technology agreement review, which involves a certain amount of privacy, right? I think she's being able to use that because she's in law school and is looking to get into privacy. That's a great way to be able to become attractive because you've already got a position, even though it's an internship paid, and it's one where you can do it during the summer or during the year, but it could be used to leverage to get to the next position. Any experience counts, right? So not just privacy, but if you're looking at like technology agreement review, that can also be used because any of these agreements involve privacy in one way or another. So it's, whether it's in-house, frankly, my opinion is that while it's a great opportunity, there's lots of lawyers in law firms that are doing this. It's not easy to get a job in law firm, coming out of law school with no experience. It's obviously a highly desired area, but for some reason, a lot of law firms are not looking for someone straight out of law school or someone with no experience at all. That's not a pessimistic view. It's one where I think it's changing, but there's just not as many jobs out there in large law firms as you think. There are probably more opportunities, I think, in corporate. So even if you're, being in a corporation is not your end goal, get the experience. For one thing, you might like it. For a second, they're going to give you better training than other opportunities. If you're in a startup, as a very young lawyer, you got to figure out, okay, so who's going to teach you? How do you learn? I was involved in a startup 2 years out of law school, and they knew it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but we kind of learned, and I had a good outside counsel looking over my shoulder a lot, at least in IP law. So look at whatever your job, any way you can climb on the ladder with the first rung, do it. Whether it's consulting, in-house, or small law firm, whatever. It doesn't matter in one sense. You might find opportunities, and then go from there. The government has often got great opportunities, and they will train. The FBI in their cybersecurity area, they hire some of the top people in the country. all these areas are possible. If you really want to get into this area, you'll find a way. The challenge, I think a lot of people look at it, is like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I can get into privacy? But I'm not sure it's really what I want to get into. It's kind of hard to dip your toe into some of these things. But my career has been a series of not being able to go through the front door, but sometimes the side door, the back door, the basement door. Find the doors, which is why talking with people, as Michelle and Rachel and Megan had talked about, talk with people to find things, which of course means coming to the Privacy and Technology Law Forum in March. We will be having an in-person social event after the second day, or first day, I can't remember which were scheduled. You'll have opportunities to attend some of the privacy section events when we start getting back into session, into live in-person session. You're gonna meet lots of people. We'll have 70 or 80 people at these events. This is a great way to start hobnobbing with people that can, see where the opportunities are. And people like James, who have already been through a search. He and other people like him might have ideas of where opportunities are because they're right at that level.
Rachel, and then James, if either of you want to add as well, how does one assess opportunities? How does one find opportunities?
I will add a little bit. Going back to the networking, I think that networking is extra important because the people who you talk to may have opportunities that have not posted yet, that may be a great opportunity for you to be able to get your foot in the door. And I think that is definitely, I know that's how I've gotten a couple of positions, just talking to people. And I am also an introvert and I hate going out and talking to people, but I also like to eat and do things with money. So getting a job that pays for that is very helpful, and just networking. And you never know who you've met who may come back to you and say, hey, so-and-so told me that I should talk to you, that we have a position that may be interested. And always be positive and thoughtful after you do a job interview, even if you don't get the position, because sometimes they come back to you and say, hey, this position we filled with someone else, but we have another position that we think would be great for you. And will you consider applying for that?
Yeah, great advice, Rachel. James, what about you?
No, I agree with everything that's been said. And Jason, you couldn't be more right about me being most adjacent to the search process. I still can't believe it's been almost a year since I joined McKesson, but I still vividly remember the job search after law school, and remembering how necessary it is to leverage, as many relationships and technology sources as you can. Literally, where are the jobs? Check LinkedIn, check job boards. I was on the IAPP job board all the time. Setting up LinkedIn notifications is crucial because you will literally get notified for anything that has, privacy associate, privacy analyst, privacy, technology specialist. Those types of positions are out there, and you may not know about them because they do sometimes arrive under different titles than you are accustomed to as an attorney. But they're definitely great positions to open up your opportunities into privacy and into the privacy legal landscape. Particularly also, just like Rachel just mentioned about being notified of jobs before they're posted. Because of my relationship with McKesson, after my 1L internship there, I stayed in contact with not only the attorneys that I worked with, but specifically the privacy attorneys I worked with, and was notified that the analyst position would be being posted soon, during my job search process. They probably notified me that it would be posted and that I should apply. And I think I'm so bad with the dates, the time frame, but maybe November, but the position wasn't posted until January, and immediately applied and, went through the interview process and everything, and was ultimately hired to start as an analyst. It did seem different than what I expected or anticipated as to enter the privacy legal space, but ultimately it has been a great position, and have progressed while here already into the staff counsel role. And I just believe that it's crucial for anyone looking for a position in privacy to just continue to search and seek out those terms, those positions on job boards, or speaking with people in the space.
Yeah. So let's move on to another portion, setting yourself up and for success and distinguishing yourself. As we do that, though, maybe we can first talk about what it is to be a privacy generalist versus a specialist, and sort of an overview of the different areas. So maybe I can ask Megan, Jason, and Michelle to speak to that.
Sure, I can start. I mean, there's so many different types of opportunities and career paths in the privacy field. It's almost hard to even give an overview of it. I mean, you can focus your work on compliance or breach response, or if you're at a law firm, M&A, you can focus on emerging technologies or being a privacy engineer or a product specialist. And I think or just be a generalist. You can work across industries and learn different types of privacy laws. That's kind of what I did in the beginning. But I think it's really important to emphasize that while you might not get your dream job right away, or what you're interested in might change over time, there's always opportunity to move around. For me, for example, I did a lot of HIPAA early on in my career, and it was a great foot in the door, and I learned a lot of skills that I could apply to opportunities in the future. Now it is a very small part of my practice, and probably not my favorite of the privacy regulations, but I am glad that I got to do that and to learn from it. And so I think it's important to always think about how the work that you're doing now can relate to the things that you want to do in the future. And I saw that somebody asked a question about getting Iapp certification and how relevant that is. I think it's really important to have a good sort of fundamental understanding of the privacy landscape, even if you're not interested in specializing in all of it. And I do think that the Iapp certifications, including the privacy law specialist designation that was mentioned, are helpful.
Jason or Michelle?
Michelle, you first.
All right. So I think Megan gave a great overview. I'll kind of give my perspective on it. And for me, it kind of depends on where you're coming from, kind of what would be the best for you. So I would say, I would recommend, if you're unfamiliar with privacy, or if you're just trying to figure out what your focus might be, then I would start out as a generalist. Unless you know that there's something, as Megan mentioned, as I'm sure Jason mentioned as well, that connect what you're doing now or what you've done in the past to privacy. An example would be, we had somebody that we hired into our office who had passed as a prosecutor, and she wanted specifically to translate that into working on law enforcement and privacy. So she, was hired by the Law Enforcement and National Security Unit. And so if you're able to translate something that you've done in the past to privacy, I think you might want to look into sort of more tailored or specialized opportunities. Otherwise, generalizing gives you time to see, what you're most interested in and what you're actually willing to pour your time into. My job, for instance, is pretty broad and touches on a lot of different areas of law enforcement and surveillance, to antitrust, anti-competitive issues, to ethics, human resources concerns, especially now on the day of COVID, and even incident response. So, I have nothing against specialization. I think if you know what you're interested in, or kind of how you're able to make your way into privacy, take advantage of that 100%. But I think if you sort of dive into something that isn't necessarily a topic that you're willing to spend weeks working through a nuanced issue, or something like that, maybe generalist sort of role is a better place for you to start and kind of see what you are really willing to dive into, because it can get very technical very quickly.
Jason?
To the extent that you're already in privacy and you're trying to distinguish yourself, leverage what you've got. If you're in an employment, labor and employment department, figure out how to leverage that which you have and learn more about privacy. If you're in IP, There's all sorts of things. IP is a natural extension of data because it involves privacy, which involves information and how it's used. And IP attorneys kind of have a natural understanding of things and who do they belong to, who can use them, and what can you not do with them. Things like advertising technology, AI, NFTs, crypto. All of these things touch on different areas. So again, I'm a big believer in using what you've got to either build or leverage off of. So if you're already in a law firm, use the skills that you've already developed or are developing to figure out, okay, so is there an area? If you're in litigation, you're probably not going to be focusing a whole lot on policies and procedures. It's more be like incident response, e-discovery, and how to limit that. But it's becoming a specialist. That opportunity affords itself when you're in a large enough group that has different segments. So if you can find a group that's large enough and get in, great. I think you'll be able to find it, and if it's a decent group, they'll enable you to be able to migrate between them to some degree to get cross-trained.
There's a really good question in the chat. If you're a junior attorney, what's the best way to even start with US laws, with the CPRA? Should you have a global view first?
I would get a global view. Again, look on the web. There's so many different law firms and articles that are freely available. Basic privacy law. If you remember the IAPP, whether you're a student or otherwise, great resources. If you're in a law firm, you've got access to Practical Law Company, not PLI, Practical Law Company. They have a phenomenal library, including things on overviews. Tap into the privacy and technology law section. We'll have materials from our previous seminars and webinars. Obviously, another pitch, come to PTLF this year, you'll get a boatload of 12 hours of CLE. You get materials that will be kind of the 100 level, some may be more advanced. There's lots of resources to just start learning. Read the news in privacy. There's lots of things like Data Breach Today has got free email newsletters. Banking, finance, healthcare. There's I think it's Data Breach Today has got a lot of different ones. They're all free, and they'll start giving you just some insights as to what's going on recently. You don't necessarily care about the XYZ strain of malware, right? But you start seeing things where you can start reading it just over breakfast, or look at Reddit, right, to start understanding more things.
Yeah, or podcasts are also great.
Podcasts, there's tons of podcasts. Better than Peloton.
Megan talked about IAPP certification. That has been a big question amongst our audience participants. I wanted to open this up to everyone, what their view is on IAPP certifications. But James, I'd like to get your view first.
No problem, Ami. For me, I believe the IAPP certification was definitely critical for my job search because I obtained the IAPP SIP E certification. That's the GDPR SIP Europe certification, and I obtained that after my summer with OneTrust, because when OneTrust started, they were really the GDPR solution. So that entire summer, I was studying GDPR articles and application. So after the summer, I just felt like it was, a great opportunity for me to take another step forward in distinguishing myself and setting myself apart to say, like, look, I, studied and obtained the SIP certification. I'm serious about privacy. I think it was great for while I was interviewing during law school, but it didn't really play as much of a role after law school as, as many applications as I submitted. The interview started with McKesson. So once that began, it did help during that interview process and distinguishing myself and showing that I had taken steps outside of just the usual reading and trying to get experience in privacy. It did say that, hey, I invested into myself and obtain the certification. But I don't know if it's 100% the thing to do to set yourself apart. You can definitely continue to seek experiences in privacy, and figure out how your previous experiences can be described in the privacy landscape, because everything is so related, just how Jason was describing. I do think it has been helpful for me though. And speaking of the IAPP, the student membership is much less expensive than the lawyer membership. So I would encourage the students out there to join the IAPP while still a student.
Rachel, I know you have a ton of certifications. What are your thoughts on IAPP certification?
So I think I have 3 or 4 from IEPP, depending on how you count them. And I'm looking at getting the European one this summer. And I have found that a lot of job descriptions will ask if you have one, or are you willing to get one within 6 months of starting the company? And I like that because I have not had to personally pay for mine. It has been paid for and required by the jobs where I've worked. So that was helpful. When I'm hiring, it is nice to see, because it does show that there is interest in privacy and that you are willing to go out and, show that you've got that standard set of knowledge that they're looking for in the exams.
Let's also move on to the importance of networking when it comes to setting yourself up for success and distinguishing yourself. Rachel, I'll go right back to you. And then James, I'd love to hear your thoughts on networking.
As I've said before, I think that networking, you need it to get your next job. We've all used it to get a job. And I think that there are a lot of resources going back to the IAPP. There's conferences, they have local events called Knowledge Nets that run on a quarterly or monthly basis, and they're virtual now, but they do them in person. OneTrust runs events. There are lots of events and lots of groups. There's groups on LinkedIn. If you look out there, there's a huge amount of privacy resources and groups that you can use for networking. And I think that a lot of them are free, and it's just a great way to get started and help get your foot in the door.
James, any additional thoughts?
Right. Everything Rachel just said, 100%. And especially while they're virtual, or if they're virtual, take advantage. Because I remember, trying to attend the Knowledge Nets and the OneTrust events and fighting downtown traffic all the time. So take advantage while you can. I definitely think they were helpful for me. And like I said, getting to know the people in the space as well as the subject matter, because all the events would, feature presentations or, examples of privacy in people's professions. So I think networking couldn't be more essential than in the privacy space. Additionally, like I said earlier, continue to reach out to people, reach out to me, reach out to the people on this panel if you're interested in privacy, and we can guide you or direct you to someone who can help you as well. And then also take advantage of existing relationships, because if you don't know any privacy lawyers at this time, you may know someone who does know a privacy lawyer. So don't be afraid to voice your interest to the people in your life and describe how you would like to work in this growing practice area. I think that was critical for me, and I can't count how many privacy attorneys I met with during law school.
Yeah, did
And
anyone
thank
else
you to Jason and Ami and Amanda Witt. I see a lot of them on the call right now.
One question we have that we received just now. Actually, it was not a question. Did anyone else want to add anything about networking or opportunities to network?
I would just say, especially if you're in-house, make sure that you're networking with, your colleagues at your company, maybe who aren't even in privacy, but for example, I work at a technology company, so it's really important to get to know the engineers and the product folks, and people in marketing who you're going to be partnering with to solve some of these complex challenges, because it's really good to get to know them for your day-to-day, but then also as they move on to other jobs, it's great to have that relationship.
Yeah, I'll just also add, don't be afraid to put yourself out there with networking. As somebody that has gotten a bunch of jobs that way, and now hiring, I love when people have reached out to me and I can actually think of some people that we might want to, think about when they apply for our roles. So it's nice to be able to spot that as someone on the hiring end as well. It's not, as long as you're respectful about it, it's not frustrating, it's not annoying to get emails from people. It's actually kind of encouraging and does provide opportunities on this end as well. So don't be afraid to reach out and do that.
Well, we have just a few more minutes until we get to the end of the hour. I guess I'd like to just solicit final thoughts on breaking into the privacy world from each of our panelists. And Michelle, since you were the last to speak, I'll just put you right back on the spot.
That might have been my final thought, is just, don't be afraid to network or to ask for 15 minutes for coffee or something like that. And, do a lot of research and work on your own end. I know Jason said invest earlier, and a couple people have also mentioned it. But just taking the time to familiarize yourself with what's going on in the privacy sphere can be really beneficial when you're having a conversation with somebody that might, help link you to a job, or when you're interviewing or anything like that. It's nice to have sort of a background to demonstrate that even if you don't have a long resume of privacy roles, you do actually care about the topic and you have spent time thinking about what you'd like to do.
Great. James, any final thoughts?
James, mic on.
I was just saying I'd like to encourage everyone who's seeking an opportunity in privacy and use your resources, network. It's a growing space, and I think there will be more opportunities in the future. Just continue to be diligent and persistent.
Megan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say it's a really exciting field, and it's changing all the time. So there's, it's a great time to jump in and start contributing to the practice. And don't get discouraged if you don't find the role that you're looking for right away. There's a lot of opportunities out there.
Thanks. Rachel?
I'm going to echo what Megan has said. Don't get discouraged. Keep on applying and keep on learning while you're doing it, because technology is changing, the role is changing, and you may find something that within privacy that you like even better.
And Jason, to conclude.
As we've all talked about already, is investment, learning how to find, the beginning opportunities, where there's a pro bono or within your own group, to just, to slide in very, very gently or gradually, or if you can jump in, great. But a lot of times it's kind of sideways. You learn a little bit about it. You answer a question, you handle a question, all of a sudden you might get another question. It's kind of what happened with me. Is I was asked a question, didn't know the answer, found it. Then I was asked another question, then another question. All of a sudden I figured, hey, I know a lot of other people in my large firm that know how to answer these questions. Maybe I ought to become, the person who knows how to handle these. And it kind of snowballs from there. It's, by simple looking at how many people have attended this webinar, which is over 100 people, you can tell this is a popular area. I'm looking at the attendee list. There's a lot of people I see that are in different areas, some senior attorneys in different areas. Now, this is a way to add on to what you've got, to become more valuable, to expand what you've got, or to transition into other areas. This area is certainly not going away. And again, figuring out the right way to break into it, well, there is no right way. Sometimes it's just a matter of being at the right place at the right time when your client's got a question, but then finding out how to find the answer. Just to reiterate something which something we mentioned is that this session is being recorded and is going to be uploaded to the section's website shortly after this presentation, maybe a few days. So you're welcome to be able to review it if there's anything that you felt was useful.
Well, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to our panelists for sharing their experience and their knowledge with all of us. As Jason mentioned, this recording will be available either later today or tomorrow. But as James had also mentioned, reach out. It's always a good time to get to know a privacy professional and to jump in. We have a lot of privacy work to do in the world, and we need more people. So thank you everyone for your time, and have a great day.
This concludes today's meeting. Thank you for joining and have a great afternoon.